Man drags 25-foot tall tree that he sawed down with a little saw through the streets of Seattle, through the streets of Ballard. But don't worry, city officials say that they're going to have a stern talking to with him. Let's get into it. What shenanigans do we have going on in Seattle? Here we go. Should we watch just a little bit of video? I think so. I think it's the right call. Here we go.
Mary, we were told by multiple witnesses that they saw that man cutting down the tree and then dragging it with a rope. And we're also told that this is not the first tree that's been illegally cut down.
From a park.
This man could be seen in the Ballard neighborhood dragging the tree and then cutting it into pieces with a handsaw.
This is probably the third or fourth tree that we've seen completely sawed in half. He seems super unstable, and he's running around with a saw cutting down trees in our neighborhood. And it's
unstable?
Upsetting to see.
You think?
Well, some were surprised to see this man dragging a 25-foot tree. Others said this isn't the first time they've seen him around.
I have seen that guy around this building.
Oh, I see it all. That right there, nothing compared to what I've seen. That's crazy, though.
We spoke to Councilmember Dan Strauss, who represents the Ballard area. He tells me the man is well known and they work closely with him to get him help with housing and counseling.
He's been a lifelong Ballardite, and he's going through some hard times right now, and this behavior is not okay.
It's believed the tree was cut down from Ballard Commons Park down the street. The park was once the site of one of Seattle's largest homeless encampments. Residents said it's frustrating to see the park get vandalized.
Then we planted a bunch of trees there, sawed down one of the trees, right? So it's like one step forward, three steps back.
What is being done to prevent these trees from being cut down?
Well, you never want to see a tree cut down. In this case today, we're going to be having some really stern conversations with the gentleman that was dragging the tree through the street.
I asked the council member exactly what he meant by that, and he said that there will be consequences, but he did not go into detail with it other than it will be up to their outreach team.
There's going to be no consequences. This is Seattle. We're talking about Seattle. There are zero consequences for this type of activity. Zero consequences. This guy's going to keep on whacking the trees and then dragging them through the city. And, just when he gets to a point where he's comfortable, he's going to pull out his saw again and cut them up into little bits and pieces. This is what happens when you let Crazy Town run your streets. This is what happens. This individual is mentally unstable. He should not be allowed to do this. And yet, in our infinite wisdom in Seattle, this is what we're doing. Portland, San Francisco, LA, same thing. We are allowing this stuff to go on when we know darn well cutting down a tree at a park. Let's take a look and see. I'll tell you where this is. This is Ballard Commons. So I did a video on this channel. I've covered Ballard Commons. It had one of the bigger homeless encampments in Seattle. It was just rife with, you name it, everything associated with homelessness, the drugs, the break-ins, you name it. So this guy cut this tree down and then he walked a couple of blocks this way. Where was he going? Did he need firewood? What was his end goal? What was the deal? Don't really know. But oftentimes, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring up this story is I talk about pushing folks, and this guy isn't. They're indicating that he is a lifelong resident of Ballard. Okay, so everybody knows him, but that's further indication. Everybody knows he's crazy, right? He is mentally ill and he needs help, because normal people don't walk into a park and take a saw and whack down a tree and then just allow him to walk several blocks, down the street with a 25-foot tree. That is not normal. But that's what we got going in Seattle. And you can see by the response by the city councilman that is responsible for this area, big long laugh. What can we do? I don't know. Get that guy the help that he needs. But we've got all kinds of individuals like this roaming the streets doing crazy stuff. Ballard, Ballard is one of those neighborhoods where I have indicated big push of people that have gone out of downtown have ended up in Ballard. So I'm kind of backing out the map here. Here's the Space Needle. Here's downtown Seattle, Cal Anderson Park up over in here. And so Ballard is basically across, it's Lake Union at this point, and to the north and west a little bit. But that's where you've got some major homeless issues going on. And the Ballard Commons Park was one of those parks that had just been, the area had just been rocked for months and months and months as the city just allowed this massive community to build up. And it's literally surrounded by apartments and then some commercial on the south side, I guess it is, and then some transitional homes that are being torn down and put in bigger, 2, 3, 4-story residential apartment complexes. That's what you've got, surrounding this area. So it's one of these inner city parks, and the guy's running around with a wood saw, and he's just whacking the tree down. And then he's clearly handled trees before because he's figured out how to, pull them with both hands. And he's got that down. Let's read the article here. People in Ballard witnessed a strange and concerning incident on Friday. Yeah, that's concerning. It's concerning because you've allowed people to just do willy-nilly whatever they want, whether they're mentally stable or not. And this is how you get there to this kind of thing. A man was seen dragging a tree down the street near the public library, that's just to the south of the Ballard Commons Park, and cutting it into pieces with a handsaw. It happened near 22nd Avenue Northwest, near Northwest 56th Street. That's basically the intersections of Ballard Commons Park. Como News was on the scene as the incident unfolded around 10 a.m. Here's Jonathan Simmons. In Ballard today, where witnesses say a man cut down a tree near Ballard Commons Park before dragging it for a couple of blocks to the Chase Bank, where he later disassembled it. Was it assembled before? No, he whacked it up into little pieces, right? What was he doing? What was he thinking? Do we not? I guess we don't arrest this individual. I guess we know him. So all right, try not to cut any more trees down. I mean, is that the stern conversation you're going to have? And can you have stern conversations with somebody who is clearly in the middle of some kind of mental crisis? Can you have stern conversations with them? Absolutely not. No, you cannot. They're not in a mental place where they can make decisions, and they don't have the ability to think rationally because whatever is going on in their head is pushing them to cut down trees and do just crazy stuff. We've got, here in Bellevue, we've had not a homeless encampment, but a former Silver Cloud Inn get converted into long-term housing for people struggling with houselessness or the unhoused. So we're getting a bunch of people very close near to where I'm sitting that are walking or taking the bus. And so I'm seeing more and more in my beloved, mini marts. And one that I don't go to often anymore is just over the hill from where I'm sitting. There is a Shell gas station, and I've gone to it for years and years and years because my office used to be further east than where I sit by like a mile. So I'd go to this one versus other ones I go to now. Hadn't been there in a long time. And while I was in there yesterday, there was clearly a couple of homeless dudes, and one guy was trying to figure out what kind of drugs he was going to get for the other homeless guy. And the other homeless guy was a little bit more together, and he kept shouting, don't talk about drugs in the store. And it was just back and forth, and the store clerks yelling at both of them saying, take your boyfriend and get out. Just this mess. And I thought I was about ready to walk out, and I'm like, nah, I'm just going to get my Gatorade and I'm going to, get out of here and go do my thing. This is after a workout. And I just felt like having an orange Gatorade Zero. So I did that. But at the one homeless guy who was just he's clearly not altogether there. He pays and he leaves $7 on the counter, and the clerk says, you want your change? Do you want your change? Do you need your change? And the guy just looked at him, and he just, had that look in his eyes. He's clearly on something, or he's just crazy. Combination of both, right? Who knows? But he's not able to make decisions on his own. He shouldn't just be running around willy-nilly. The $7 left on the counter, I mean, that's not in and of itself. That's not a deal breaker for me, but it's an indication of this guy isn't dealing with reality. And yet we're allowing him to just roam the streets. And that's how you get somebody like this guy cutting down trees and hauling a 25-foot tree down a public street. That is not normal. And yet we're going to give him a hall pass because he's crazy, but he's experiencing something. You know, we used to put people in institutions, and then we started medicating them, and then we closed down all the institutions. We just dumped everybody out. And, you know, that's how you get a situation like this, where you've got a guy whacking trees down in the park. Now, the reaction, you're going to have a stern talking to. It's like having a stern talking to at the guy at the mini mart at Shell. It's not going to do any good. Hey, do you want your $7? Do you want to take your $7? And the guy just looks around and he's, he doesn't have the ability to make rational decisions. So what other kinds of decisions are these individuals making? Some very horrific ones. And those are what we are seeing on the daily, right? On the daily. So, this is kind of what you get. Hey, let's for kicks, let's just take a look at the pictures. All right. So, we are pulling a rather large tree. Props to the kid for getting the tree a couple of blocks down the road. I'm sure that was difficult work because this thing must weigh, I don't know, a couple 100 pounds. It's got a tree trunk that is probably 10 inches in diameter, something like that. It's not an insignificant tree. Now, with all the tree huggers that we have in Seattle, everybody's concerned about the environment. But, you whack one down in a park, crazy guy, it's fine, it's good, it's all right. We'll have a stern talking to. It's not funny, but it is, because it's so ridiculous. This is just, it's so nonchalant. Well, we're just going to drag a tree down. Because typically when you chop a tree down, you have a truck right there and, you whack off the limbs and then you cut up the pieces and maybe you make some firewood out of it. This isn't much of a firewood tree though, is it? It's pretty green. You're going to have to let that age for quite some time before, and even then, the logs are just not done. Plus, harvesting from a city park, I've been told that's, it's frowned upon and it might be illegal, but laws are such a, fluid situation here in Seattle where you've got people doing nutty stuff all day long. And this just isn't that big of a deal. I saw on a short of Jeremy Harris today, he was interviewing a homeless drug addict couple in Seattle. I don't remember where they were, but he was like, just so nonchalant. And right before this podcast, I texted him or I sent him a message on Instagram and said, so as he was interviewing the female, she was injecting herself with meth in the neck. And so I said, he nonchalantly put in his reporting, as she was injecting herself in the neck, I was asking her some questions and I was like, so yeah, that's pretty, it's just acceptable. You just, and he messaged back with, it was like she was getting her nails or done something like that. Getting her nails are done. This is just wild stuff that we accept as normal now. I don't think we accept it. We still frown down upon it, but we don't really do anything about it other than maybe we're going to give him a stern talking to. Now, Junior, no more whacking of the trees down, right? No more whacking of the trees down, but we give these folks such a hall pass. I mean, there's gotta be, you know what I'm getting at. There's got to be actions. There's got to be repercussions for your actions, right? Repercussions for actions. Now, in the meantime, we're just gonna haul the tree down the street. That's in the middle of the street. That's in the middle of a fairly busy street, right? You got a lot of commercial around there. All right. There's somebody actually using the crosswalk like they're supposed to with their walker. And here he comes with his tree. It looks like he's got a branch in hand. That's a big tree. But don't worry. I'm sure. Okay. Yeah, it's not an insignificant tree, right? And how long did that tree take to grow? Now you're going to have to plant a new one. You have to go, all right, here's the police that show up. I mean, what are they thinking? They're thinking, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? It's nutty. It's nutty. I mean, this is crazy town stuff, right? This is probably the third or fourth tree we've seen completely sawed in half, said Kate Fade, who lives in the area. He seems really unstable. We heard her say that. He seems really unstable. He should probably be getting medication and or somewhere where they can watch him. You know, something along those lines. You can't be running around. Yeah, in the old days, you just get hauled off to the institution, right? Hey, yeah, you can't be doing that. We can't have you doing that. And he's running around with a saw, cutting down trees in our neighborhood, and it's really upsetting to see. Yeah, I could understand that. I'm not a big tree hugger, but trees and parks are good, right? I mean, gives you shade. They look nice. You don't necessarily... Now, this isn't a renewable forest where we're actually harvesting trees for wood products. This is a different drill, right? Come On News spoke with Councilman Dan Strauss, who represents the Ballard area. We've heard this, but it's still funny. He tells me the man is well known and they work closely with him to get him help with housing and counseling. Okay, but we got a little issue with integrating with the community that is not going all that well. He's been a lifelong Ballardite and he's going through some tough times right now. He's mentally unstable, right? He's mentally unstable. So he should not be running around unsupervised because this is what happens when crazy people do. So, and this behavior is not okay. All right. It's not okay, but society is telling him it's okay. Just do your thing. He's not going to remember that conversation. It's going to have zero impact on him. If you've had children and you put them in a timeout or you have a stern talking to, that doesn't really do much, does it? Especially if you've got a strong-willed kid. Well, a strong-willed kid isn't that much different than an individual who is mentally unstable. Because they don't give a crap about what you're telling them. They just don't. They're like, well, I mean, you can tell me all day long. I'm just going to go out and do my own thing. And that's what this guy is doing. Residents believe the tree may have been cut down in the Ballard Commons Park area. They're not sure because so many trees are being cut down in the area. It's just one of many that, Hatchet Hank here is just whacking down, right? The park was once the site of one of the Seattle's largest homeless encampments, which is why people said it's frustrating to see the park get vandalized. We planted a bunch of trees there, sawed down one of the trees right. So it's like one step forward, 3 steps back, said Fade. Come On News asked Councilmember Strauss, what's being done to protect the trees in the area? Oh, yeah, I never want to see a tree cut down in this case today. We're going to have some really stern conversations. Oh, okay, but this guy's mentally unstable, right? I'm no counselor, but stern conversation with this dude, that's going to accomplish. You are acting as if that's going to have any kind of impact whatsoever. It will not, and he will continue to cut down trees. Maybe he gets arrested. I mean, I don't want to see him thrown in jail because that's probably not where he belongs. But if you break the law, you need to be in one of 2 places, jail. And if you are mentally challenged, then you need to be somewhere where they can help you, right? Maybe get the medication that you need. And it sounds like, they're trying to do these things with this individual. In the meantime, trees are being whacked left and right. And, that's not right either. And with the gentleman that was dragging we're going to be having some really stern conversations with the gentleman that was dragging the tree down the street, said Strauss. Could you imagine if this happened, in another city where they don't just tolerate absolute nonsense like this? This kid would have been arrested on the spot, handcuffed, taken to jail. That's just what they would have done. I'm not saying that that's the best solution, but that's kind of where you got to start with somebody like this, because anything else just basically gives this individual the green light in whatever mental capacity they're running on, gives them the green light to, all right, nothing happened last time. And they told me a bunch of stuff, but what was it that they said? Try and do better next time. What does that mean? I don't know. Where's my saw? Is my saw sharp? I need to maybe sharpen my saw. I got to get out there and I need to do some more, carpentry projects, whatever. So this, do you guys remember Lawnmower Man? Lawnmower Man? Yeah, this is not far from where Lawnmower Man was. Not far from where Lawnmower Man was. So we've got some real history in this area. This is Ballard. This is the heart of Ballard. This is the commercial district of Ballard. You've got some stuff going on. There's shenanigans in Ballard. A couple of streets like Leary Way. I don't know if it's been cleared recently. Man, it just gets loaded up with tents. And then you've got all kinds of just craziness. The Fred Meyer, like, big department store with a grocery store. It is just to the south of this area. And man, I have seen some of the worst cases of homeless people walking around on drugs as I have anywhere in that area. The Fred Meyer in Ballard is it's actually maybe kind of Fremont-ish. All those neighborhoods run together, but I have seen some of the craziest stuff. I mean, people walking on the street they are literally, they look like animals and they look like they are from a different planet. Maybe like, some of the aliens that the Mexican government has and that they're sharing with the world that looks a lot like paper mache. Did you see that one? Yeah, kind of some crazy stuff going on. So Como asked what those consequences were that the guy cutting the tree down and hauling the tree down the street. And Strauss did not go into detail, but said it would be up to their outreach team that works with the man. But what this kid did was illegal. It was illegal, and you're ruining the parks. So yeah, not in Seattle. In Seattle, you're just like, do better next time. It's okay. We'll plant another tree for you. We'll Johnny Appleseed this bad boy up for you. We'll get you another tree going. Make sure you stick around here, Tiger, because in 10 years, you can lop that tree down as well. And then maybe you can get further than the 2 blocks this time and get 3 blocks and just see how your firewood collection goes. I mean, what's the guy going to do with the tree? I mean, all right, you whack it down and then you drag it somewhere and, right? I mean, there's some major questions that don't need to be asked because this guy's, he's not altogether there. And yet we treat him as if he is a sane adult, right? That's how we treat him. Oh, we're going to have a stern conversation with them. Good luck with that. I mean, this stuff is just no consequences for your actions. And that's how we end up with lawlessness going on like it is in Seattle, especially Ballard. And that's why you've got businesses that are leaving and not wanting to come back. This is what is going on. I'm not saying it's happening all over Seattle because it's not, but it's in areas where if you've got homelessness, you got the drugs. And if you've got those two components, oftentimes you got a bunch of crazy people running around who are on drugs. They are self-medicating. They have come into the city because they've been told, go to wherever, go to LA, take officials in Alaska are trying to, they're trying to get their homeless population to take a one-way flight to LA because they don't want them to die throughout the cold winter Alaska winters. And I get that, but then they go to LA and it's not working and they end up in Portland, they end up in San Francisco, they end up in Seattle. And, these folks traveling around that have the mental capacity of this guy who's whacking trees down. That's how you get all of this drug tourism. And that's kind of what I refer to it as. And it's because these individuals know they can go to a San Francisco, they can go to a Portland, they can go to Seattle. And if they do something as stupid as whacking a tree down, what's going to happen to them? Nothing. Can have a stern talking to. Because in these cities, we don't believe in actual consequences for our actions. And that is how we get there. So, citizens of Seattle, if you're really concerned about that tree coming down, we know that it's happened before because local residents are describing, it's 1 step forward, 3 back because he cut 3 trees down, whatever. When that kind of activity goes on, if you really want to make a difference, when the election happens for your city council, this next run, yeah, Yeah, maybe vote a little bit more in a moderate, just anything but progressive, but progressive. And it'll have more impact than anything I can ever say here, right? Sarah Nelson, I was watching Sarah Nelson talking. I can't remember what she was talking about. She was saying, hey, you got, I think it's 9 positions on the council board here in Seattle. And she came right out and said, I need 4 more people that can basically be moderate and support what we're doing here, which was trying to put the pieces of Seattle back after it just been shattered by all this ridiculous, crazy stuff during the pandemic and all this homelessness just exploding and drugs and fentanyl and overdoses and a record year for murders. So we've got a couple of people on the city council here in Seattle that are doing really good work. And Sarah Nelson, she's owner of Fremont Brewing. So she's a local business owner. And she's been a big proponent of a lot of moderate measures that progressives would say, oh, don't do that. And she's had a lot of traction to a lot of her stuff, a lot of pushback as well, because Seattle, in its progressive wisdom, it just says, cut a tree down. It's okay. We'll plant another one because, you got to be allowed to do what you want. Right? Sarah Nelson comes right out and says, hey, it's next election. We need 4 more people like me. And then we can, get something done. And it's true. It's wildly true. Problem is, I don't think the citizens of Seattle, even if their trees are getting whacked down and some joker's dragging them down the street, I don't think they're willing to vote in somebody who's going to take public safety seriously, who's going to really drop a hammer on this kind of behavior, because it's going to take some real tough love to get there. And we're such a permissive society here in Seattle. Just let it happen. Well, this is the kind of stuff that happens when you just let it happen. And then some joker from Bellevue is doing a podcast on it, and it'll go out to a pretty big audience. It'll go out to a big audience because I don't know if you know, but we just cracked 100,000 subscribers, and we've got some big rotation. We've got over 30 million views on the channel. There's eyeballs here. So this kind of stuff, Seattle should be ashamed of this. I mean, you just can't have people. Minute you see somebody whacking down a tree in a park, you call 911 and say, this isn't acceptable. But not only did that guy whack the tree down, he dragged it a couple of blocks before anybody said anything. And the bottom line is we don't have enough cops to be out there when the tree's being whacked to be able to take care of it and say, hey, Junior, you can't do that. Hey, Hatchet Hank, that's a no-go. No whacking the tree down. We don't have the police to do that because in our infinite wisdom, we defunded the police and then we've just, demonized policing in its entirety. I was reading about San Francisco, their most recent cop class. I don't know what you're supposed to officially call them, but probably not something like that. They had 7 individuals in their most recent graduating class, 7 cops. New cops from their academy in San Francisco, 7. And they're shy like 600, some just ridiculous number. Well, by the time I'm like 85, you should get there. Maybe if you don't have, the rest of your police force, do a lateral move or quit or retire or whatever. You got some crazy dynamics going on. Is Seattle in the position to shift? And I'm talking about this a lot about Portland, because I think one way or the other, Portland is going to turn a corner here at some point. And the reason I say that is because some of the investments I see happening are done by folks that, they're not going to put their what on the line unless they kind of see it. All right, here's how this is going to happen, to the point where they're going to be able to make that investment work. I think you're going to see some of this change, but it can't change unless you get some new leadership. Because the ones that have allowed this kind of nonsense to happen, they got to go. They got to go. Yeah. Having a stern talking to. I'm not saying this guy belongs in jail. He belongs somewhere where somebody can work with him in his head. But you can't be roaming the streets either, right? That's a no-go. And so maybe a night in jail is where this guy, he looks like he's sturdy. He looks like he could handle himself. Put him in jail for a night. Let him see how that goes. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I'm not a social worker. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a whatever, but you can't just let people run around with saws whacking trees in parks. That's a hard no-go for me. I don't know about you guys. What do you guys think? Is whacking the trees? Is Hatchet Hank doing, the Lord's work here in Seattle? Should we be commending him? Should we give him, a star on his report card? If you think so, let me know. Let me know in the comments. All right. That's it for me on this one. It's some of the stuff I cover here is just so ridiculous that it has to be covered because it's news for reasonable people. Thanks for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.